Thank you so much, Oleg. Hello, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Lauri Perämäki, and I've been working for ZOAN for about slightly more than 3 years, and been working in the, VR, AR industry for about 6 years or so, and then about 16 years with, MMO games, etc. So my experience comes from slightly different background in a way. And by the way, Isra Rab had a good comment in the chat earlier on about speakers having Ethernet cable. I can assure you I do not. So if there's any lag, I recognize that sometimes there might be a spike of about 2-3 seconds, and then it eventually stabilizes, and that's on me, not on the organizers. So thank you so much for the opportunity. So I was tasked to, the video you saw there was obviously about the, the first general video about Cornerstone land. We got a bunch of others, but I thought that might just, give the most, basic welcome to the topic. And I was basically asked to talk about how this all came to be, what it really contains at this moment, and, what's to come essentially. And, then I think we will see a lot of the talk regarding the term metaverse within this discussion, and especially related to questions. Feel free to shoot me with, anything in regards to those topics. I think that's the one that really makes this conversation up. Regarding this topic, I think for the next purpose, you need to know a little bit about what is the organization, behind this development, if some of you don't know yet. So it's a company called ZOAN. It's about 12 years old, and we've always been doing 3D modeling and using game engines to make those graphics to whatever end device need be. So basically combining all that traffic with the latest technology, essentially. It all got started pretty much with the first virtual reality glasses, and that's sort of where we found our own place in a market, essentially. So we had a lot of projects coming primarily first from Brazil, actually, because our CEO, moved in there, met a bunch of guys, and they also did, because of their connections, a lot of projects towards Finland as well. But more and more, we've been, all the time in Finland, and most of those early on folks are actually moved in here to Helsinki with their families. So to the theme of this, also this recruiting event, I think it's an awesome thing to have those guys here that are, have been there from the beginning. Then we also, as a studio, we had a phase where we did a lot of real estate projects. We always used 3D and Unreal Engine to have those real-time cases for real estate developers for, you've all seen those, buildings that have not yet been built, but, they're obviously visitable. You can move around there, visit, and at the, upcoming window view of your future apartment. So a lot of those might have been actually made by ZOAN, actually, when I moved to Helsinki, I think about 4 years ago, and came to work here. One of those, we were looking for an apartment, and it actually ended up being the made by ZOAN. Actually, the video we were looking at, we were sort of then pausing the video regards to the apartment and kind of looking at where we could place the sofa or so. So that was our best tool at the time for that, plus measurement, obviously. We've always aimed towards this photorealistic looks, and we try to sort of, play around that strength. We have some really good guys working on that aspect of the, environment development, and that has led us to sort of work a lot with these also technology companies who really are also pushing the limits of their hardware. So we're oftentimes also a good showcase. And then due to us using the sort of game and technology stack, but for purposes of B2B organizations, a lot of times they sort of look at their options regarding visualizations, and if it needs to look real and have that real-time aspect to it, then we've a lot of times been a good option in that sense. Few more things about ZOAN, how we came to be originally. I think this is one of the more early examples of our work called Virtual Helsinki. Some of you may have seen this, and there are some statistics of that 3D environment for the city of Helsinki throughout the year. Source is from the software called Meltwater that essentially tracks your social media reach, etc. But that original environment actually have since been used in 29 different projects from all the way to virtual concerts into like AI algorithm training and many sort of purposes like event related things. And obviously marketing has been one of the main aims of that. But then I used to explain what ZOAN does to my folks, like, because it's not really gaming essentially, it's like, you know, VR projects, etc. I just mentioned that I do computer stuff. So that sort of changed when we have the JVG Mayday concert, I think it's, you know, Zoom around that time again. That was one of the more viewed, and that was actually most viewed, you know, virtual event during that year, or something similar to that, with an audience of 1.4 million, most of those in Finland. And if you consider the amount of people living in Finland, that's absolutely huge. One of the best things for the large audience regarding that, I feel, the concert sort of hit the sweet spot of having that virtual environment, which was still recognizable, obviously, as Helsinki, but then having those real artists perform live in that sense. And I always remember the fact, because someone mentioned to the band essentially during the concert that there is a lot of people talking about it. Before that, they were performing in front of a green screen, and they did have a, you know, vision towards the general audience, but then they heard like how many people actually are viewing, and I remember them reacting to it like, okay, that's massive. So that was a cool moment, and that's some of the bit of a live magic when it comes, because you can always think of something going wrong. I can, you know, simply fall off here from, you know, behind the table. Anything can happen essentially. That led us to doing a lot of virtual concert stuff, and referring to me earlier explaining to my parents what do I do for work. Now I could just say that, oh, you did the JVG, you know, Mayday concert. Okay, you know, that's what you do now. But no, we do a lot of the B2B project essentially, and one of those later ones has also been the paid access Nightwish virtual concert weekend essentially. Hopefully some of you here have been able to attend. That was amazing experience, gathered fans from 108 countries after a long period of time, and, you know, sort of celebrate their favorite band together in that virtual environment. Here's, I get confused because I keep pressing the arrow to change the slide. Here is some of the look from the outside of the environment. Obviously, the concert was held internally, and then there were a green screen there for 2-day performances, which were absolutely amazing. And that was also a great success, also on the financial front for the participants. I think it generated more than $1 million in revenue, essentially. So that was also a showcase of also that paid access as you have a large enough audience. And being able to pack that amount of people into that building is also an achievement. Then there are just, you know, some showcase images also from the Alma concert, just showcasing some of the creative stuff behind those works. So what does ZOAN do now? A lot of the times we work with virtual events, especially in the context of B2B organization. A lot of the times those are when you have a product launch, etc. Then we're also there to work, and we, you know, put the speakers inside those virtual environments and use those in a good ways. That's also oftentimes tied to these virtual showrooms, which have been requested a lot of the times, especially during the pandemic. And we have some of our own proprietary technology in regards to those, where we generate, you know, in a really smooth workflow, good cinematics from Unreal. And, you know, initially we continue those cinematics from the frame where the last stopped. So we have this really smooth, well-running experience, actually without the use of, you know, cloud resources. But that will be in the talks today, essentially, because that sort of leads us to Cornerstone as well. Then there are some of the areas, because we got a lot of recognition from the Cornerstone project, that essentially woke all of our previous conversations back alive, and a lot of new ones also from internationally. More on that real soon. We have a lot of industries, we have a lot of companies that we work with, and that is really just made possible by great tools such as Unreal Engine and others that really enable these different type of production using the same tool. We do a lot of virtual production related things, and then we had most of our projects before the pandemic were obviously virtual reality, which during the pandemic was not so good of a thing. You had to have the showcases were often in public places which were shut down, and you still would have had to sort of switch the glasses from one user to another, which didn't felt quite right during the pandemic. So even if we had web-based projects before, those developments sort of accelerated, a lot of the times during the pandemic. So all these terms, VR, AR, XR, mixed reality, now we essentially have a new name for that. And this is something we've been doing all of the time we've been here, essentially guiding companies towards this obviously uncertain future, and creating project by project wherever they see the most value. But trying to gather that library of 3D assets for them. That was something I started with about 6 years ago, talking with different organizations, and at least have those 3D models of general most known products or spaces that you currently have if they're important. So trying to get that started on this track, but someone mentioned, I think on Twitter really well, that the metaverse, the term is sort of a curse for us not being able to decide on the whole VR, AR, XR spectrum. And so now we have this. So I think this is an interesting development. Obviously gives, once again, my job a new meaning. I haven't changed it on LinkedIn yet, but I think I will eventually. I tried to ask myself one question, did anything change in the industry after we had this term here? And my current answer would be yes, it did. I think we shouldn't undervalue the idea of having these new developments, trying to think bigger essentially. And there are a few distinctions when it comes to what we used to do in terms of projects and what is now in the metaverse. One of those things I think is the simple idea. Simple is, by the way, technically a wrong term, but interoperability. And then also the sort of enhanced idea of having your identity involved a lot of the times in this new future. And this might be an interesting discussion, especially if we have time for the question parts by the end of things. But just by coming sort of, not outside gaming, industry, but sort of somewhere in the really close side tracks. So how those approaches in a way differ. I'm obviously a participant in the gaming industry, and I think I viewed about all of the possible documentaries on YouTube. I know there are many; they're long. Essentially, what we did, we went all in towards this metaverse idea, and we tried to sort of communicate to these organizations like what will it mean. So we decided to do what we wanted those companies to do essentially. So we started with building our headquarters into this virtual world. That simple idea, just in on itself, have the ability for our folks here at the office to have those sort of more immersive avatar-based meetings and have those conversation-based there, and do a bit of marketing at the same time as obviously well. That changed after we got such an immense feedback from some of our current partners that could they sort of join into this and have their own location, based next to us. So essentially the idea of showing others what can be done sort of worked in our scenario. So we got so many requests regarding that. So we also went in all regarding those, having those land plots for each, organization originally. That was meant to be. So we also, regarding those Web3 principles, so this is the time where we start about talking blockchain and NFT-based ownership. I think there's good things regarding that as well, although obviously not all of it, even a slighter part of it. But this project essentially is a long-term project. And the video you saw before is simply an introduction to, what will be built. And I will be talking, just quickly on those topics as well. But, this is a long-term thing which we're trying to develop. So we're not trying to rush development into something that is, even as a term, quite vague and, to becoming thing. Regarding the metaverse, I think there are sort of two tracks of discussions, at least the sort of communication bubbles that I see. There is because I'm part of the gaming community, throughout my personal experience, and then part of this, organization developing and doing things with new technology part. That's where the metaverse is super exciting. Some have a better understanding of the term than others. And then we have actually the gaming community, which will require different things. So when we talk about the metaverse, I think for those organizations and essentially the long tail of gaming, I think the metaverse is much closer as a term for those people. I think then, me and many of you guys as well, as people who play a lot of video games, I think it will require some new technology, because we just started talking about this and a lot of us have seen many of those elements already existing. It will require something new. And there's also arguments to be made that it does require virtual reality. That would be one technology. I think cloud gaming and having that sort of instantaneous access into different worlds where you essentially keep your identity, at least within moving those different environments. I think that would be at least close enough to what we actually might, call a metaverse. At least, looking into the past, we will not have a moment where we, sit hands behind our back. Oh, this is the metaverse now. That's never going to happen. Some of the early success, I try to be quick because I have a little bit of time left. Some of the early success really came for us having that, high visual fidelity with the cornerstone. A lot of those organizations being excited because they were looking into how they could get into this thing, and then they need to show their products in a good way so they do look real. And it's also used obviously for marketing or even research purposes on how taking companies to metaverses or how to showcase your 3D, assets of your products to a community that might not be, firstly the community that you're used to engaging in. And then there's the secondary thing, which is more about, I feel, the common narrative of things. There is the meta, which tends to be more on the sort of the walled garden corporation type of thing, and then you have the Web3 decentralized, some of it slightly chaotic as well. So we essentially, are trying to position ourselves somewhere in the middle. So more in the beginning, we start from this centralized approach where we are actually the sort of, the party deciding a lot of the things, but slowly transitioning those into more decentralized, decision making when we see fit and possible. So a lot of the people like that approach essentially, because some of the issues in other metaverse projects, not to mock on them, but there's no visual cohesion. There might be, futuristic black cube building on one plot, and then on the next you have a farm, and that just, sort of breaks some of the immersion in that sense. And what we try to do here is to bring some of that visual cohesion into there from the beginning as well. Some of the building blocks that we're thinking here, and what I'm also looking to discuss is obviously the non-compromising graphical quality. So what this means within these environments is a lot of cinematic based and minimal UI regarding those features that we have, and obviously that instantaneous access through that cloud gaming aspect. We understand that there's a lot of things that need to be still developed regarding that, and a lot of other factors as well, but that really is where we do see a lot of these metaverse-like developments, where especially the long tail of gaming could see that being something clearly new, being able to jump from a news article or invited by a friend to a session that has good graphical quality, you have the sound going through, and you have a good social experience, whether it's short or ends up being longer, as well discussed also in the previous panel on the topic. Then we also have the tokenized visual assets, which we hope to have the interoperability for. That's a fancy word. And that doesn't obviously mean complete interoperability, as we well know, regarding game engine versions or different tools not always agreeing on things. So that's something we attempt to do. So essentially some of the route is with standardization. And then there is our feature set regarding those social interactions. I wish I had one video to showcase regarding that, but you can have really good in-depth conversations with those avatars. Even as a gamer who played MMOs for 16 years, that's a strong feeling, being able to have that really close look with an avatar that looks realistic, and you kind of are able to skip that uncanny valley, of the interaction. That will be a strong feeling. As mentioned, this is just the beginning. There's a lot of things to come. If you wish to work with the latest tools and in this inflection point of sort of, in our case, Unreal Engine, cloud infrastructure, and blockchain technology, it does enable new things. We highly believe so. If you want to be in the zone where you can experience this, and this, by the way, an ad, and work with some of the best folks in terms of environment creation and creative stuff as well. We have, at least 2 open applications here on the platform as well. But I think I need to end my speech eventually here. I took a bit of time there.
Yes.
Sorry about that. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Lauri. Thank you very, very much. And I see there's questions coming. We don't have the time to answer the questions now. So I would like to actually, you guys go and visit the ZOAN stand, put your questions there. And now we have an action happening at the Slipgate Ironworks. The guys are showcasing something at their stand. So I'd like to get everyone to go there. Thank you, Lauri.
Thank you so much.